furious with me that this is scandalous and should be dealt with, and those people blocking with me that this is scandalous and should be dealt with, and those people blocking it held to account.
On last week's bull crap, so I thought it'd be interesting.
The Industry Recovery Plan will make dental services faster, simpler and fairer for patients, including in Clacton, and will fund around 2.5 million more appointments. On the matter that my honourable friend raises, as he'll know, this is a local matter, so the Integrated Care Board will determine if they wish to support the pilot proposal in Clacton. But I know that the Minister for Public Health has written to my honourable friend about the proposal, and I hope her letter addresses his concerns.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join with the Prime Minister in his remarks about Lord Cormac and Ronnie Campbell? Tory MP spent last week claiming that Britain is run by a shadowy cabal made up of activists, the deep state, and most chillingly of all, the Financial Times. At what point did his party give up on governing and become the political wing of the Flat Earth Society?
Mr. Speaker, another week where the honourable member is just sniping from the sidelines because he has absolutely nothing that he can say what we do. What we're getting on with, Mr. Speaker, is delivering on the people's priorities. The number of small boats down by 1/3, Mr. Speaker. NHS performance, improving, inflation continuing to fall. And Mr. Speaker, not only that, we're delivering a significant tax cut for millions of working Britons. While his incoherent energy plans would put taxes up for everyone across the country.
People want to vote for? Seriously, look at the state of the ship. Here's a real question and a real answer.
In America, trying to flog her new book.
This is the House of Commoners. Where have the parties the Commoners? Where is the Great Unwashed? We can keep that Rayner thing, like that big sexy red tick thing, but
they made her Prime Minister, now they can't bear talking about her. In search of fame and wealth, she's taken to slagging off and undermining Britain at every opportunity. She claimed that as Prime Minister she was sabotaged by the deep state. She also remained silent as Tommy Robinson, that right-wing thug, was described as a hero. Why is he allowing her to stand as a Tory MP at the next election?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't believe a single member of this House supports Tommy Robinson, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, if he wants to talk about former leaders and predecessors, the whole country knows his record because he sat there while anti-Semitism ran rife in this party, and not once but twice backed a man who called Hamas friends, Mr. Speaker. But to their credit, the Shadow Chancellor, the Shadow Home Secretary, and indeed the Shadow Foreign Secretary refused to back the former Labour leader. But he didn't, because he's spineless, hopeless, and utterly shameless.
Mr. Speaker, I've changed my party for the better. He is being changed by his party. The reason he's letting her stand is because he's too weak to do anything about it. It's the story of his leadership. When they refuse to accept any blame for the ruin of the last 14 years, you do wonder who they think has been running the country all this time. Thankfully, the former Prime Minister's on hand again to help. It turns out it's all the fault of the media, the corporate world, and, bizarrely, the President of the United States. Winston Churchill once said, the price of greatness is responsibility. Now, I don't think the British public are expecting greatness from this Prime Minister, just a bit of accountability. So doesn't think it would be great if, just for once, the Tories actually took some responsibility.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about leadership, he talks about change, but when I learnt of something that I didn't agree with, I suspended one of my MPs straight away. But Mr. Speaker, when he learned of vile anti-Semitic remarks made by a Labour candidate, what did he do, Mr. Speaker? He instructed his team to defend him. He sent a shadow cabinet minister to campaign for him, and he personally backed him for days. And that's the difference between us. I act on my principles. He hasn't got any.
I can't believe he's saying it with a straight face. The former Prime Minister continued on her American odyssey. She also claimed, Mr. Speaker, that Nigel Farage is the man to restore the Tory party. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether he too would welcome Mr. Farage back into the Tory fold?
Mr. Speaker, in our party, we have a proud tradition of diversity and accepting everyone from every background. Indeed, it is a proud record that puts Labour to shame, Mr. Speaker. This is the party that delivered the first Jewish Prime Minister, the first female Prime Minister, the first black Chancellor, the first Muslim Home Secretary, and now led by the first British Asian Prime Minister. While it seems he can only champion men from North London, it's the Conservatives that represent modern Britain, Mr. Speaker.
So this diverse Tory party does welcome Nigel Farage. The Prime Minister 2 months ago, the Prime Minister said the Tory party is a broad church. I welcome lots of people who want to subscribe to our ideals and our values. This is the same Nigel Farage who said he agreed with the basic premise of Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech and bemoaned the influence of the Jewish lobby. So is the Prime Minister simply too scared to stand up to the gaggle of Tory MPs who moonlight as GB presenters, or think Nigel Farage shares the ideals and values of the Tory party?
Mr. Speaker, he wants to talk about values, but tomorrow in Rochdale, the people will have a choice of 3 former Labour candidates, 2 of which are anti-Semites, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, his party is so mired in hate that despite 3 ex-Labour candidates standing, he can't back a single one of them, Mr. Speaker. It's because we expel anti-Semites, he makes them Labour candidates.
Mr. Speaker, the truth is these are no longer the Tories your parents voted for, and the public can see it. The Prime Minister has lost control of his party to the hordes of records of malcontents, the tinfoil hat brigade over there, the extremists who wreck the economy, all lining up to undermine him, humiliate him, and eventually to get... When will he ever stand up to them and end the pathetic spectacle of a Tory party that used to try and beat Nigel Farage, now giving up and dancing to his tune instead?
Mr. Speaker, utterly shameless from someone who stood by while anti-Semitism ran rife in his party, oversaw the appalling situation in Rochdale, and twice backed the member for Islington North. And in the last few homes, Mr. Speaker, last few weeks, we've seen members of Parliament's homes surrounded, their events disrupted, council meetings threatened, and just last week we saw the very rules that govern this place abused.
Forces launched their heinous attack on Ukraine. The response of the British government and the British people has been magnificent, and I want to pay my own tribute to all those who have done so much, not least in my own constituency of Bracknell, where Ukrainian people have been so warmly welcomed. Mr. Speaker, we must never bow to tyranny. So could the Prime Minister please assure the House that our support to Ukraine and all of our NATO allies will continue to be unwavering?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I join my honourable friend in thanking people up and down the country, including the people of Bracknell, for welcoming Ukrainian families into their homes and communities. During my visit to Ukraine in January, I announced a major new package of support, including £2.5 billion of military assistance. And last week, we announced 50 new sanctions targeting individuals and businesses sustaining Putin's illegal war machine. Our support to Ukraine will never waver.
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr Speaker, 30,000 people dead, 70,000 injured, 1.5 million sheltering. Biden has indicated that that ceasefire may take place from Monday. Does the Prime Minister share in his confidence?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, we have consistently called for an immediate humanitarian pause which would allow for the safe release of hostages, including British nationals, and more aid to reach Gaza. We welcome progress on a deal. As the honourable gentleman said, there has been progress, and we urge everyone on all sides to seize the opportunity. And I've been clear that we must seize the momentum from this terrible tragedy to find a lasting resolution to this conflict, which delivers on the promise of a two-state solution and ensures that Israelis and Palestinians can live in dignity and security.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr Speaker, we're now approaching 5 months since this conflict first began. And in that time, this House has equivocated, and this government on 3 occasions at the United Nations has abstained when it could have voted for a ceasefire. Abstentionism is not leadership. So can I ask the Prime Minister, should this matter now come before the United Nations, with a ceasefire potentially in sight, will he use his government's vote in order to deliver that ceasefire?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, we support the United States draft resolution that was discussed with colleagues at United Nations last week, but just calling for an immediate full ceasefire now, which collapses back into fighting within days or weeks, and indeed does not release hostages, including British hostages, is not in anyone's interest. We must work towards a permanent ceasefire, and that starts with an immediate humanitarian pause to get aid in and hostages out. I agree with the honourable gentleman about the suffering of the people in Gaza, and in this country we should be proud of everything we are doing to help them and provide them the life-saving aid that they deserve.
Dr. Jamie Wallace.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm sure we're all proud of the open government we have, the availability of information and our open data. But with machine learning and AI fast becoming more prevalent, does the Prime Minister not agree that now is the time for us to look at licensing this information where it's going to be used for commercial gain to inform intelligence that's going to disrupt society and our economy? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Well, can I join with my honourable friend and his passion for AI? And like him, I'm proud of our record at the forefront of the AI revolution, having created one of the world's first AI safety institutes, establishing the State of AI report, and hosting the world's first ever Global AI Safety Summit. Now, I will ensure that my honourable friend meets with the relevant minister to discuss his proposals to ensure that we can harness the opportunities of AI and protect ourselves against the risk that it poses.
Liz Saville Roberts.
Plaid Cymru has signed the full facts pledge for an honest general election campaign. One of Full Facts 4 asks is to renounce deceptive campaigning tactics. There is evidence of egregious, misleading campaigning in Wales and elsewhere by the Conservatives in recent weeks. We all have a responsibility to campaign honestly, because the alternative is to be complicit in dismantling democracy. Therefore, will the Prime Minister sign Full Facts pledge for an honest election?
Well, Mr Speaker, I was pleased to just be in Wales last week, and these are the facts on the ground. The Labour-run Welsh NHS is performing the worst in the United Kingdom. Small Welsh businesses, including pubs and restaurants, are facing a crippling rise in their business rates. And indeed, Welsh farmers are being decimated by the plans of the Welsh Labour government. Those are the facts in Wales, and we're going to at every opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. There are 4,000 patients in Carshalton and Wallington facing uncertainty after landlords pulled out of discussions the day before the GP practice's lease expired and then issued them notice that they were trespassing. Now, the local ICB has issued a very weak statement. The local Lib Dem-run council is refusing to meet the practice and myself. They're going to have a surgery to go to. So can the Prime Minister assure me that when these decisions are taken by landlords, that there is appropriate infrastructure in place to support NHS patients before they are cast out to try and find somewhere else to go?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend will know, GP leases are commercial agreements between landlords and tenants, but he's right. Everything that can be done should be done to ensure that GP surgeries do not have to close. That's why in March last year we commissioned a review for a lasting and sustainable peace. But just calling for something that will collapse back into fighting is not in anyone's interest. But all our diplomatic efforts at the United Nations and elsewhere are targeted towards bringing that about, and I'm pleased that in recent days has been made, and we should keep pressure on all parties to come to a resolution.
Lib Dem.
Does my right honourable friend share my enthusiasm at Monday's announcement of 27 new potential bathing water sites across the country, including 3 in Shropshire, 2 on the River Severn in Ironbridge and Shrewsbury, and 1 on the River Teme at Ludlow? How will these very welcome designations improve the quality of rivers in Shropshire and the other areas under consideration?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on Monday, this side of the House voting for the strictest storm overflow targets and plans for unlimited penalties for polluting water companies opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The parent of a 2-year-old in the UK is currently spending over £14,000 a year on a full-time nursery place. Last year, the Prime Minister promised these parents that in April 2024 there would be a new free childcare offer. With only a month to go, parents don't know they can access this offer because of staff shortages and because of the lack of childcare spaces. So could I ask the Prime Minister today, will the parents that he promised, will they be able to accept this childcare offer that he talked about last year, or is this another...
Actually might want to have a conversation with her Welsh Labour colleagues who have been given the funding to deliver childcare expansion in Wales, and what have they done? They've pocketed the money instead of matching our plans to support parents in England.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. The notorious Uli Treaton Crossroads, just outside of Alton in my constituency, is just one of several major road safety and highway issues that have been ignored for decades by the Labour-controlled Rotherham Council. I will be presenting a petition to this place telling Rotherham Council to end this chaotic mismanagement. But can I ask the Prime Minister's support to urge both the Labour-controlled Council and the Labour Mayor to listen to residents, get this junction sorted, to stop the huge tailbacks, save lives, get Rother Valley moving, and end this war against cars in my constituency?
Well, my honourable friend raises an important point, and he's right to champion his constituents in this way, because when Labour run things, they do just run them badly. And he can be assured that we have provided £750,000 of funding to Rotherham Council for safety improvements to local roads, and we're continuing to provide my vulnerable friends' constituents with a further £1 billion allocated to his local area in the second round of the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement. Because of the decision that we made on HS2, communities, towns and cities across the North and Midlands are going to receive billions of pounds of funding for transport projects that will make a difference to him and his constituents far quicker than anything else that was planned.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Another 80 victims of the contaminated blood scandal have died since Sir Brian Langstaff gave his final recommendations on compensation to the government in April 2023, 329 days ago. Will the Prime Minister join families who are lobbying members of Parliament here today to explain why his government has failed to implement any of those recommendations 11 months on?
Mr. Speaker, I'm acutely aware of the strength of feeling on this issue and the suffering of all of those impacted by this dreadful scandal. We've consistently acknowledged that justice should be delivered. I gave evidence to the public inquiry last year. The government has accepted the moral case for compensation, and which is why on Monday in the other place we committed to bringing forward amendments at report stage of the Victim and Prisoners Bill with the intention of speeding up the implementation of our response to the infected blood inquiry.
Neil Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Prime Minister sincerely for the extra £244 million announced this week for transport and investment in Shropshire, This comes on top of £300 million for modernisation of our local A&D services, levelling up funds to modernise Shrewsbury Town Centre and fully funding the North West Relief Road, the Ring Road round Shrewsbury. These infrastructure projects will have a major benefit not just for us, but for those who follow us in Shropshire. There is, however, one issue I would like to still raise with the Prime Minister, which is how our local Shropshire Council is funded to deal with adult social care costs. We have a disproportionately ageing population in Shropshire, and Shropshire Council is struggling to meet those additional costs. What more can be done to help councils like Shropshire deal with rising adult social care costs?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I pay tribute to my honourable friend? He does, representing his constituents. He's right about the pressures that are faced, particularly in rural areas, which is why the government provided £600 million of additional funding for local government across the country, ensuring around a 7.5% increase in resources available to invest in social care, but also by an extra addition to the Rural Services Delivery Grant, an acknowledgement of the challenges of providing services in rural areas, with more funding for those rural councils to deliver.
Alison Thewlis.
My constituent Lee Haywood in Dalmarnock is on a communal heat network and has seen both his standing charges and his energy bills absolutely soar. The heat network.
Sorry, I'm going to have to turn it off and on again because I don't know what's happening. I'm getting hundreds of dropped frames and my internet connection seems to be going in and out like a motherfucker. You can see. It's not OBS, it's not my settings. These usually rock and roll easy, so I'm assuming there's a problem with Virgin. And it keeps fucking crapping out my internet. Persevere for a wee bit and see what happens.
Join me in welcoming the recent announcement about the fall in energy bills, bringing them back to levels that we have on top of the cost of living support that the Chancellor has provided, so that everyone in our country gets the help that they need.
Paul Bristow.
Warrington Fields is a much-loved open space, cherished by local residents and used by the nearby school as playing fields. Shockingly, Peterborough City Council proposed to fence off almost the entire area, rejecting a compromise that most residents and the school were happy with. Bizarrely, that the local council seeks to blame the Secretary of State for Education, myself, and even the Prime Minister. Will